he taught me several, which are portions of many different texts. And when I was ill and about to go to a conference in California, I re-listened to several of those texts and extracted some. I extracted portions into English on what we're used to, the vocabulary we're used to is sudden and gradual enlightenment. And in Tibetan is more like simultaneous and gradual enlightenment. Simultaneous because aspects of the path are realized simultaneously. And you can see why that then would mean sudden also. And the conference was on sudden and gradual enlightenment. And I'll pass that along. I in preparation for this series of meetings, I brought this up to date, and I'll pass that along to you at the appropriate time. It's a really marvelous piece. It was controversial at the conference. Some of the professors came up to me after I gave my talk and said, "Oh, this is actually Dharma at an academic conference." Others were fed up that I was inserting Dharma into an academic conference. Why did I bring that up? Yes, I listened to a number of his teachings in the midst of my sickness preparing for this conference. And it was delightful, and extracted these teachings which were on many different aspects, paths within the Nyingma teaching, but which he was teaching from a Great Completeness point of view. Yes, okay, enough on that. Now, during cyclic existence. So now we get a perspective here on cyclic existence. What is cyclic existence? It's when cyclic existence and nirvana. And what is cyclic existence and nirvana? Impure and pure appearances. From within this, cyclic existence and nirvana, from within this and Khetsun Sangpo identifies cyclic existence, this as the inconceivable noumenon of one meaning and many synonyms. So just above, we had the one meaning and many synonyms. Fundamental mind, ultimate mind of enlightenment, naturally luminous mind, fundamental cognition, mind vajra, space vajra of pervading space, and so forth. Now, could we say well, I was sent an email saying, what's the definition of Rigpa? What do I call it? Fundamental awareness, right? His Holiness calls it innermost awareness. And what do I call it?
Intrinsic awareness.
Intrinsic awareness, thank you. Got some. Sometimes I don't know. Intrinsic awareness. And remember, I was positing that perhaps His Holiness gets innermost awareness. Well, perhaps. Because in the Guhya Samaja system, as he put it one day, I put a challenge to him, but anyway, it was in response to a challenge, that the trigger, he used the word trigger, he used the English, for in my words, for turning on the fundamental innate mind of clear light is found at the, well, one of the points is at the heart, inside this little, like, box. And by concentrating on it, you can trigger the fundamental innate mind of clear light, which is not some tiny thing inside a little box. Do you follow? But the trigger is inside that little box. So maybe from one point of view, because you're concentrating on some tiny thing inside a red on the bottom, white on the top, little box, inside, way inside the central channel, you know, having withdrawn all consciousnesses, you see, withdrawn, and concentrating on that. But you see, the fundamental innate mind of clear light, you see, what I was challenging on is not some tiny little thing. You don't experience it that way. So then he used the word trigger. Very interesting.
How about detonate?
No.
No?
Detonate means destroy.
Or it means to set off. Like
Yeah, detonate.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Interesting. But it's not an explosion. Although, it's interesting. You know, it's said that when we die, we're scared like hell of the appearance of our own most innermost nature. Innermost? Now, I'm using the word innermost. I'm naturally using the word innermost. I'm not using it because he used it. It's what came out naturally. Our innermost nature, our most real nature, we're scared to hell of it. We're scared like it's our fundamental nature. And I didn't purposely use that again. It's our fundamental nature, and even fundamental identity. I usually don't like to use the word identity, but it is. This is who we are when you scrape down to it. But we're afraid of our own selves when it manifests, most often. However, as it's said in Nyingma, when you, in fact, when you recognize it, it's like when you're happy with your mother, being set on your mother's lap. Oh, you know, you feel at home. Lovely mother, I'm with my mother. You know, the sense of at-homeness, at-homeness. Now, of course, if you don't like your mother or you didn't want to be on your mother's lap, you cry like hell and you want to get off your mother's lap. It's called Mi-pam-gya-tsho. Ma, mother. Pam, is her lap. Okay? Ma-bang, pum is really pu. Pu is child. If you take pu and pumo, pu is boy child, pumo is female child. But the general term for child is pu. Pu, juk. Juk means like set on or come on, but like a child set on, come on the child's lap, and being put on, but Mabam Pumjuk, very famous Nyingma saying. So, of course, you have to understand the context of just thrilled to be on the mother's lap. That's a psychological depiction of the at-homeness of the actualization of the innermost mind, of the intrinsic awareness, of whatever name one uses. As opposed to that, we're often scared shitless of it, because we're so, used to desire, hatred, even neutral, dumb states of mind, that we're just not used to it. That's why when we take vows in Gelug and probably other traditions, in Guya Samaja, you take vows to reenact the process of death, in which you pass through the 8 levels of mind. You take vows to reenact these 6 times a day. And you get used to imagining these 8 experiences of deepening I want to use a word that evokes imaginative states, you see. Used to imagining, if it was, you could make a movie of it, right? But you imagine that you going through these. And people repeat the names, but they repeat the names in order to invoke the visionary content. What you want to do is evoke the visionary content of the 8 in order to cause yourself to become used to all 8, so that you will notice and not be scared of the 8. Are you scared of the 8 when you see stars? I'm not. Are you, stars or fireflies, right? That's the same. So as it goes down deeper, so mirage, smoke, fireflies within the smoke, flame, but like, are you going to see a candle flame, or are you going to see the flame above a butter lamp? I wonder with people who use a lot of butter lamps who weren't grown up in that culture, but you folks, would you see butter lamp, or would your background of candles come forward and you'd see, a candle flame, getting steady, you see, the winds getting steadier. So at first, then getting steady, then a sky, white sky. It's called moonlight, but you don't see moon. You see sky, just white sky, but like moonlight. Then red or orange. Then black. Then black so thick you pass out. As Evans Wentz, well, probably Gadzi, is it? Dao Samdrup said you swoon. And then when that clears, the fundamental innate mind of clear light. So of course you don't want to teach yourself that you get scared shitless. You want to teach yourself it's like child on mother's lap, or, this is, you could say yourself. I think in East Asian translations of East Asian Buddhism, this is your own face. Why is face so good? Because, except for rare instances, you recognize your face in the mirror. This is the real face. So the clearing away So I suppose if it's experienced like a detonation, then maybe that would be the word for being scared shitless. Whereas when it clears away, it's called the clearing away of the three pollutants. Then the minds of moon, sun, and darkness are pollutants. Whereas when you experience moon and sun, by no means are they experienced as pollutants. They're marvelous. They're wonderful. But from the point of view of the fundamental innate mind of clear light, they are pollutants. So we take vows in which we practice these. So you don't think of these when you're practicing them also, going through them. You don't think these are pollutants. And then also, even the mind of darkness, blackness, it's black, and you're not thinking, I think even, you're not thinking pollution, you're thinking, you're experiencing it. And then you're thinking of the fundamental innate mind of clear light. Thinking that, imagining it. this imaginative content, so that you can recognize it. So I'll repeat something I said last month in our meeting of when His Holiness asked Locho Rinpoche, when Locho Rinpoche, when it appeared that his plane was going to go down, His Holiness asked him what he was thinking, and he said he practiced this, this, what is done 6 times a day. And His Holiness said, this is a real practitioner. Instead of, feeling the sweat on your palms, you do this, because you're going to go down, and you're going to go through these 8. Quickly or not, you're going to go through these 8. So how do we get going on these? So now in Nyingma also, we're going to see that these 8 are part of the Taplam, the path of method in Nyingma. There's a path of method and a path of release. And you're going to see that in Mi-pam-gya-tsho's system of the Great Completeness, there's a path of method and a path of release. The path of release is, there are both of these. The path of release has some preference, but the path of method of Guya Samaja is not like thrown away. It's also practiced. Well, I'm just introducing that there are many Dzogchen teachings, and we are exploring Dzogchen as explained by Mi-pam-gya-tsho. I've had, and also, even it's very clear, and this teaching is very clear in Mi-pam, who's widely recognized within Nyingma, and of course we're also seeing this, getting Khetsun Sangpo's explanation, but it's right here. And what I've just said is having these 2 paths integral to Nyingma is right in the text. It's not something peculiar to Khetsun Sangpo. Trillam, the same word of release, trill. G-R-O-L. Just like the trill, mistake, trill, release. Taplam and trillam. So we'll be getting to that. So now, what is cyclic existence? It's when impure and pure appearances are not realized. The noumenon is not realized. Well, like in Geluk, what's the noumenon is emptiness. When you don't realize emptiness, you're stuck in cyclic existence. And phenomena, which are identified here as appearances of apprehended object and apprehending subject, are perceived variously in dualistic aspect. So there's a lot of emphasis on dualism. As Khetsun Sangpo said to me one day, apprehended object, which is said very easily in Tibetan, sungzin, sungzin, sung means like object, but apprehended object. Zin is apprehended subject, are bad. Very direct. Sungzin, which you can take as, you see it's put together as a compound, is bad. It's like swearing is bad. Like you speak to a child. Swearing is bad. Sungzin is bad. Apprehended object and apprehending subject is bad. This heavy bifurcation. But you see, in Geluk, we're accustomed to saying heavy, something like heavy bifurcation, instead of just saying bifurcation is bad, as we do in Nyingma. So you say, I can say we for both systems. I can identify in both systems. Okay. Phenomena, appearances of apprehended object, apprehending subject are perceived variously in a dualistic and perceived as unequal, self and other, unequal, good and bad, wow, unequal, cyclic existence and nirvana, unequal. When you do not realize that these pure and impure appearances of different, now in Geluk it says different entity, but here apprehended object and apprehending subject of just being struck down, period, bad. It's not just different entity, but it's just wholesale, wiped out. Dawn from within, you see, dawn from within. But even in Geluk we say, they're dawn from within emptiness. They're the sport of emptiness. Even in Geluk, we say everything is the sport of emptiness, the manifestation of emptiness. Even in Geluk we say, from within this basic mode of abiding, as appearances of your own karma. Even in Geluk we say that from a Buddha's own point of view, all of this stuff doesn't appear to a Buddha from a Buddha's own point of view. Why? It all arises from ignorance, from sentient beings' lousy karma. No matter how beautiful this cup is, it's all crap. It's all crud. It may have more impact for me to say it's all crud rather than use some swear word, crap, but crud. Why? Because it all gets its manifestation from karma. Karma that has as its root ignorance. It's really, Geluk also is very severe. as appearances of your own karma, but we take them to be true. In Geluk we say, take them to be truly established. In Nyingma it's a little bit said more simply, take them to be true. And from this mistake, we wander in cyclic existence. Then back to the text. When we realize them as basal appearances, while participating in the conventions of nirvana or of purity, due to realizing the noumenon, due to realizing the correct, inconceivable. Down below, I translate more literally inconceivable. Inconceivable means unencompassable by thinking. Unencompassable by thinking. You realize that all phenomena do not pass beyond the primordial mode of abiding. You realize that the waves on the ocean don't pass beyond water. Would that be boring? One of the graduate students at Wisconsin said everything would end up like a mall parking lot. Flat. That's very funny, but also stupid. Finding some cute way to reduce it to something boring. Must be thrilling. The primordial mode of abiding is not reducing it to some like dulled out. When you meditate and you become dull, and you think, oh, this is what nirvana must be like. Oh my gosh. Whereupon, although there are appearances in various aspects, and then what he said, what I just added this time, which is really nice, since these aspects have already been released, he said it twice, sin simba. Sin simba. Sin is a perfect indication of perfect. You could translate it as have been released. Have been released. And I figured somebody would think that I had just written have twice, Oh, the editor didn't catch the double have already been released. They can dawn as the nature of Buddha. Now you see the word is Sangye. I think a lot of translators, I'm not putting them down, not at all, please, that say as the nature of enlightenment, but actually the word is Sangye. It's not Jangchub, which would be, Bodhi, enlightenment, whatever word you use. Some people use awakening. But as the nature of Buddha, and you realize their equality, endowed with one taste in the thusness of the basic element. Basic element could also be translated as sphere of reality. Could be. would make sense. This is the yin. And you see in this context, like clouds melted into space. You see, there's another word for long. The sphere. But anyway, the element. Like clouds melted into space. You see these Dongba ni tu kakpa gyur. Dongba ni ki kakpa gyur. There's a phrase in Nagarjuna's, I think it's treatise on the middle, I think it is, which is translated into Tibetan in two different ways. Ceased into emptiness and ceased by emptiness. But these various appearances dissolving, melting into space, like clouds, disappearing into space. The cloud is hanging out there, seems to be, and then it just disappears. Among the three keys in the Dalai Lama's book, in the third key, the concern is with the dissolving of conceptuality, the dissolving. So here, the metaphor used is of clouds dissolving into space, and the three modes of conceptuality dissolving into, innermost awareness, intrinsic awareness. And then a lot of people just the most common translation among Nyingma translators is just awareness. Why they're using that is bare awareness. Basic awareness. What I wanted to bring up earlier was when I got diverted by myself. Are all of these synonyms, it didn't say, but are all of these synonyms of intrinsic awareness, up above, fundamental mind, ultimate mind of enlightenment, naturally luminous mind, fundamental cognition, etc.? Are they? So anyway, without any of the marks of dualistic phenomena. When you realize the noumenon, all of these dissolve, much as Nagarjuna said, into emptiness. These dissolve into the basal element, at which time everything dawns as primordially released, or shines forth as primordial release, primordially released, as not passed beyond the nature of Buddha. Again, the word is Buddha, Sangye. So I'm leaving, I'm not transforming the words Sangye into anything else except Buddha. Why not? Leave it as Buddha, as the nature of Buddha. Therefore, in terms of the impact, terms doesn't have anything to do with terms. In terms of the impact of realizing this state, it's very interesting that Khetsun Sangpo explains state as continuum, gyun, continuum of the noumenon. You see, the noumenon is what we were talking about last time. Ying tang yeshe. Ying is the element and pristine wisdom as non-dual, as not two. That's what the noumenon is. In Gelug, the noumenon is emptiness. And then as Ngawan Lingden, my so helpful, sort of primordial Gelug teacher after Geshe Wangyal and Geshe Soba, but who was like my day-by-day tutor, used to say water and water and had this elaborate metaphor. So you see, with this Nyingma layout, is starting from that water. This conceptual layout begins with the water. And the noumenon is that water, that combination. So it's emptiness and pristine wisdom as not two.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
would absorbed into noumenon be?
No.
No? Because
It's
then-
not something he's going to say later. It's not something that became two. It's not something put together into one. It is one.
So when something dissolves, that has a different...
It's not dissolved. It's very clear it's not dissolved. It's not dissolved into one. It didn't become one. Unlike the metaphor, unlike the
You were saying clouds dissolve into the mind of clear light.
yes, in that one, yes.
If absorbed into would give a different stance, like it puts you in the center of the mind of clear light,
Yes,
rather than having to look at all those phenomena going somewhere.
yeah, that's a very good point to bring up. That conceptual consciousnesses have dissolved into that definitely is the metaphor, into the basal element, into this noumenon. But the noumenon itself is not something that is two. The noumenon is emptiness and emptiness and Yeshe, pristine wisdom that have not been put together. Whereas the clouds are conceptual consciousnesses and pristine wisdom. Now this is a good opportunity to talk about the relationship between those two and how how much two are they, and how is Nyingma going to talk about them? So here the way they talk about them is Rikpa, innermost awareness. What's my term? What?
Intrinsic awareness.
Intrinsic awareness. and the I have three different terms for this one. The prowess of intrinsic awareness. And this is how it's now here's where you go to metaphor. You picture it like this. Here you have Rikpa, and then you have Rikpe Zel. Zel is prowess. It's the projective prowess. I also, for this book, came up with effervescence of Rikpa. And here they have to do this, much like the water, and not, resort to metaphor, because they don't have words, the really good words, to show the relationship between Rikpa and this stuff, like conceptuality, takes place in the prowess. That prowess sounds good, doesn't it? But it's really Zel. It's the active stuff of Rikpa, and it's the waves. It's the waves of Rikpa. It's the effervescence, but we don't realize it's just the effervescence. You see, it's the bubbliness. But Zel, you see, is not really a bad word. In one way, I'd like to call it the junk of Rikpa, but Rikpa can't have junk, you see. But that's why it goes, they move their fingers around. Like Rikpa is really some sort of steady, really fundamental thing, you see. And then you have this activity, blah, blah, and you would think that the blah, blah would be kind of nice and good, and all sorts of good things would be there. But this is conceptuality and all this other stuff. And we don't realize that, you see, this is the Zel of Rikpa. So you can have all sorts of cruddy and so forth things happening. And we don't realize that this is just the effervescence of Rikpa.
Is it like a jellyfish? a jellyfish. You can see through it, but it's kind of moving around and it's kind of
Well, you see, jellyfish are, it's hard to see jellyfish as the ocean. That's not bad.
Sometimes you use sport of.
Yeah, roba, but sport is not used for Zhao. The Namgyur Zhao, roba is sport. Zhao is artifice. I begin with the word artifice. And Namgyur is manifestation. And it comes down to and you see this separation. You see it all takes place in this, but then in the end you want to say this is just you have to realize this is just this. And so the metaphor is misleading also. You want to say, don't blame Rikba because it's all this. But this is really this. They don't move the hands around like that. But this is what I'm saying they're doing. They're saying all of this stuff that we've got to get rid of is really this, but don't blame Rikba. See, so you see, there's always some cheap thing that goes with these, with the hands. It's like when we talk about main minds and mental factors, how does it go? The main mind, now I don't, I'm confused about the main mind and the mental factors. Which one is the main mind? The mental factors are the fingers. Main mind is the palm. And the mental factors are the fingers. But, you know, that is helpful only so far. Because whatever the mental factors are doing, the main mind does. And whatever the main mind does, the mental factors do. So I was always interested to watch, you know, how far the metaphor is going to be taken. So it's only used to a point, and then the fingers are put away, and the implications of the fingers are not, of the two hands are not followed out. Well, the thing is, you don't want to blame Rikpa, because Rikpa's pure. But you got to put the blame somewhere. That's my commentary, you see. But indeed, that's what they're doing. And verbally, you get across that. That's why I used effervescence. It's like you got a glass. I'm using the glass metaphor now. You got a glass that's bubbling up outside the glass. But the bubbles can't fall back down because they all burst into air. It's no good metaphor. But clouds melting into space. But the metaphors are only going to go about so far, right? We've used our time.
Can I ask,
Yes.
you said you have to get rid of this effervescence of
Yeah.
Big Bang. And what does it mean? For impure stuff, it is logical, but for the pure stuff, like nirvana,
What this is saying here is the pure and impure get dissolved out.
even nirvana gets dissolved.
I read it that way.
It's a bit strange then also nirvana of a Buddha gets dissolved out and nirvana of a Buddha should be it.
From the point of view of the basal great completeness, from that point of view, there's no cyclic existence and there's no nirvana. But from the point of view of the fruit great completeness, there is of course, the nirvana of a Buddha, and there is an attainment of nirvana. And from the point of view of it just did say it here. I don't know as I have my vocabulary right. From the point of view of what? I don't want to say the path, great completeness. There is cyclic existence. I want to have another one. We should be able to find it. There is cyclic existence and there is nirvana. I mean, he himself said that. From the point of view of the basal great completeness, he himself, I believe, says there's no cyclic existence, there's no nirvana. And so, to learn how to make those kinds of statements is to learn the point of view of his text and to not make crucial mistakes. And with that, we will close the session and say good luck. Have a good day and see you next week.